Are you aware of the variables that can cause voids in our hot market? Stay tuned. Welcome to this week's edition of Note School TV. And today, well, it's one of your favorites, right? Crowd favorite. And that is the monthly update. Yes, it's that time again already. So before we get started, first thing is make sure and like what you see. We bring you the best content every week, and make sure you like that. Make sure that you are subscribed to the Note School TV channel. And finally, make sure and hit that bell notification. Yep, go ahead and hit that bell notification so that you will be aware of when we start every week, which is when? 11:05 Central Time. Also, I know that all of you have, and thank you so much for the comments you bring to us each week. And guys, for more information on Note School, how to attend a Note School one-day class, simply go to Note School TV or noteschool.com/TV, noteschool.com/TV. So let's get right into this, and let's bring on our leader and chief visionary, Mr. Eddie Speed.
Hello, Joe.
Good morning, sir. This is we've got a lot of ground to cover, a lot going on, right?
You know, the market update, as you said, is our most popular Note School TV episode that we have of all the Note School TVs, and that really are doing great, and we appreciate that. But you guys really like this, so we don't always try to make it exactly 30 minutes. We just try to, work through it as best we can. And let's bring the screen up, Joe. We got a lot of stuff to cover today.
Well, Eddie, so the reason we do is we run over a little bit sometimes is because we're very passionate about this, aren't we?
Well, you know what? We're just trying. We start out with probably 200 slides, and we work backwards. So got the screen up here. So let's look at it and let's see some things that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about mortgage rates. We're going to talk about inflation. We're going to talk about single-family residential property inventory, delinquent mortgages, defaulted rent by income, right? And then we're going to round it out with Canada's real estate forecast. And man, we got a lot to talk about, Joe.
We do.
So let's start out. Let's talk about mortgage rates to start with. So, Joe, that's been a big news item. Talk to me here.
Well, it is, we've been calling this for just a bit, and these are the latest as of the end. And remember, we source this from Black Knight, which is really the industry leader, and it's still tickling right there. It hadn't broached 4, but it's right there. A 30-year fixed on a conforming loan is 3.77, right?
No doubt. If you can see, I highlighted that in green. I hope that's not too dark. And look where we were, Joe. Look where we were back in September.
Yeah.
Right. And we are definitely seeing rates that are affecting things. This, Joe, it really says what really is the industry story. Mm-hmm. So once again, yellow is these are refis. This is the current level, and then new purchases are in blue. So if you look at that, Joe, it becomes pretty clear that we are seeing a lot of activity levels affected by this. So, Joe, look at this slide, and let's talk about how that really the refi market or the lack thereof, Joe, is affecting the market, because we're seeing projected forecasts that the mortgage industry is going to lose 100,000 jobs.
Yeah, and Eddie, it's not just, it's from Bank of America to Santander, Angel Oak. These guys, I mean, they've had a really good run here, right? And now that rates are starting to creep up, the whole refi industry, especially, and even the originations are starting to slow down, right? So it's the trend, and this is what we're looking at here.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about mortgage credit availability. So, Joe, This is the mortgage credit availability. And I thought this was interesting. Now, once again, they're always delayed a little bit. So you look at your chart here, it says, well, Eddie, that's only through October, but we know what the index was, Joe, and the index was 125.9, which is right over here. Okay. So this is what we pay attention to. And Joe, I just thought it was interesting. Let's go back and look at the 125.9 level, right? The latest mortgage. This is the amount of underwriting. So this was the top of the market. And so obviously when you saw the market going down was the beginning of the virus, which was right here. Right. And so let's go back to where mortgage underwriting was. Joe, we're back literally in about May of 2014. That really is where we are as far as the level of who can get a mortgage today. Now, Joe, it's been lower. It's been lower than that. Okay. And 2012 was probably the lowest. Right. And Joe, it's been a lot higher than that too. Right.
Well, and you looked at the end of the year, we close out at 125.9. And then in January, we're at 124.8. So we would think again that it would still be on the rise. But again, it just another little drop there, almost a full point. Right.
Well, you can see it's since the gigantic drop, it dances around a little bit. It goes up and down. We're not seeing any significance in saying that we think that the more like all of a sudden everybody can get a mortgage again. Right. We're just not seeing that. Joe, one thing I thought was really interesting is you went back to a historical. Now this chart started in June of 2004. Right. Okay. And of course, this was July of 8. And so we saw a bad little spell in here, Joe, till about May of 14. Right. Right. Then all of a sudden things kind of got up and went a good bit higher. Now, guess what, Joe? We're at the same point, literally. We're at the same point that we were in May. So all of this was good, Joe, but this isn't where we are. No. This was the good days. Right. And we're back to where we were, not quite as low as we were in 10 and 12. We're not quite below that, but Joe, we're not way off of that amount. Right. Maybe, and so this index number, as we said, this is what we're really talking about and paying attention to. And Joe and I've just learned to pay attention to this index number. And this index number, look at one time, Joe, it was literally here, and it one time went to here.
Hey, Eddie, that's when to get a loan, you just had to fog a mirror and you had to have a pulse, right? But I love your saying where you say, it's in a hot market, but with a credit crunch, and that's what we see over here. And that's just the number of people that can get a qualified mortgage.
Yeah, Mortgage Bankers generates this chart, and we use it fairly often because it's a good index, and we like being able to do it. Joe, let's talk about the monster inflation.
Yeah. So, JPMorgan is calling, they're saying interest rate 9 times to combat the red hot inflation. So the next meeting is the 15th, 16th of March. And, inflation is a big deal, Eddie, right?
So let's look at that, Joe. Let's look at inflation. And this was back at the beginning. This was at the beginning of the virus. Look at us a couple of months before the virus. Right. So now all of a sudden, let's look back. October of 21, we were at 6.2%. That was obviously a jump up, right? And so we saw a measurable surge in here. But Joe, the trajectory is just going like this. Yeah. And Joe, that's if you believe the government's numbers.
Yeah. Sometimes they do. There's a little fudge factor in there, right? But you look, Eddie, I looked at the consumer price index, which keeps the whole basket of items from, oil to groceries to, all of those things. And that trajectory, everyone are up.
Yeah.
As far as costs.
Oh, there's no doubt it's a thing. And I think we're going to look back and say, now, Joe, this was as of yesterday. This was oil prices as of yesterday. And look at that. We are almost at $95 crude oil.
West Texas intermediary. Yep.
So that is, Joe, that's something to pay attention to. And that is a very significant measuring stick in inflation, has historically been. And it is a very big measuring stick historically in rates.
Yeah.
So as we keep talking about where things are going, these are the things that we want to pay attention to.
And by the way, some of the futures indexes are over $100 on the futures. So just saying,
we're trending there.
We're trending there.
All right, let's talk about single family inventory. So, Joe, this is this next chart is the punchline to what has happened to housing values.
Yep.
Right? Because if you believe one concept the most in most any business out there, it is supply and demand.
Right.
Right. And this chart pretty much, Joe, paints a picture. Right. And it's a roller coaster at the top line. Right. This is the number of houses. Whoops, I didn't mean to scratch through that. I meant to do the opposite of that, Joe. Let's see here. Let me get my correct tool. This is 1.5 million houses. And Joe, I've always heard that a perfectly balanced market is about 2 million houses. Now, I know there's things that are printed now that we need way more than that, but I believe that's going to be the truth.
Right.
About 2 million houses is kind of considered a perfectly balanced market.
Stable, that's right.
If we needed 2 million houses in 2008 and 2019, not 2008, 2018 and 19. Why all of a sudden do we need 5 million houses? So I know that there's articles that say this, but why do you need that many more houses? And there's a lot of debate and argument in the industry. You can fall on which other side you want to, but let me tell you, Joe, this is a number right here.
Yeah.
And that is just about 1.1 million houses. So we have about 50% of the houses that we need listed. Right. And if people want to know what's happening to values and why it's happening to values and stuff, call it what it is, Joe. That is called supply and demand.
You know, and you look back there between December of 20 and December of 21, you know, that's when people were still at home, right? And you know, so couldn't go out and look at houses and all of that. So yeah, it's a big deal.
Remember when real estate was so on fire last summer, Joe?
Yes,
you remember that, where people were paying like $200,000 over list?
Yep.
That's your huckleberry right there.
There it is.
And so, Joe, let's talk about inventory a little bit. Let's talk about shadow inventory, right? What properties may come on the market that aren't on the market right now? And, Joe, I say that is going to be number one candidate is going to be delinquent mortgages.
This is our opportunity, Eddie.
This one is the mother lode. We spent a long time last week, a little even longer than our normal show, because we really unfolded examples of why the market was different than 2008 and what it looks like today and what real deals look like. We just took real actual deals and put up numbers and stuff. So, Joe, how about this chart? And this started back in 2005. Now, let's classify what this means. We've got, let's see here, Joe. Let me get my pencil ready. Black represents REO. That means the bank foreclosed.
Right.
And then this represents properties in foreclosure. That's my little symbol. It says in the auction right there. And then blue represents loans that are in default. Okay. Now look, Joe, looking at this chart, there seems to be a gap, right? A big gap, right? So right about the time the virus happened, then look at the level of activity before the virus and look at the level of activity like all of a sudden, like right now. And I mean, like, wow, that's kind of like that right there is something that we're going to talk about. And Joe, what we're going to also talk about, if you see my little laser pointer, is everybody talks so much about 2008. Well, Joe, 2008 was in here.
Right.
Right. But really the bigger activity, this is the auction period, the bigger activity was like after 2008. Okay. So, Joe, there's apparently a lag time to foreclosures. Absolutely. Right? So here's what we did. We broke this down. So this was, see, there was a growing activity level of foreclosures, Joe, before the virus, if you can see my little laser pointer there.
Right? Yep, absolutely. We got it.
And then let's look at this and now look at it. This was in 2008. So see, we just see once again, we remember this is the turquoise is the loans that are in auction, and look at the default. Look at the loans that were growing in default.
Right.
Right. Then all of a sudden, let's look for the next 2 years. So this was, Joe, this was 2008, and this was 2009 through 2011. Okay. You can read my chicken scratch there.
We got it. Yep.
And so then all of a sudden, and by the way, Joe, look at this period in here. I'm going to go back to my little laser pointer because that seems to do pretty good for this. Look at that inventory right there.
That gap. That's it. Yep. That piece in the middle. The
default started falling, but there's always a lag behind it, right? If it this peaked in here, but it took a long time to foreclose. So they don't want, just because somebody goes in default, they don't all foreclose on the same day. Now, Joe, the cliff isn't quite as stark as it looks here because we're going to add to it. There was some level of foreclosure activity even during the virus, but look at it. It's sort of hung up over there.
Right.
Now let's just go take that inventory. Joe, what's going to happen to those loans? Are they just not in default anymore?
Well, no, they're going to be pushed in, and then the workouts are going to have to come in there, and they'll end up, they've got to be worked out, Eddie, and they'll either end up as being sold, foreclosure finished, and there's your big pop of inventory.
Last week, we showed you loans that were in default prior to the virus, and virtually every one of those loans had been set for foreclosures and were stopped. Almost every one of those, Joe, in that example. So guess what's happening? Remember what we call these? We call these legacy loans. So these are loans that were delinquent before the virus, and these legacy loans, which is this gap right here, are legacy loans. And Joe, I'll promise you, this is exactly what we're seeing in non-performing notes right now. So these are not the loans that went delinquent during the virus. These were loans that were delinquent before the virus. Joe, every case study that we did on the episode last week was a loan that was delinquent before the virus.
That's right. That's right.
Okay,
and again, you guys remember the court system kind of shut down, and it was just, and so now it's that pent up inventory. That's that shadow inventory.
All right. So remember we said blue are loans that are in default, Joe?
Yep.
And so now guess what, Joe? We have a huge amount of loans that have now become delinquent during the virus, and they're going to add to this pile. And so how about that looking like this?
Right.
And no kidding, crazy as it may seem, this represents delinquent loans that are headed for a notice of default.
That's right. Right.
Now you're saying, so are you saying, Eddie, this is bigger than 2008? No, I'm not. But if we took all of this, Joe, and we turned it up, it would be a giant number of millions of loans too.
That's right.
Right. So we're not saying that it's bigger than 2008. What we're saying to you is that we have 2 million loans that are shadow inventory loans that are headed for a notice of default. And this chart only goes up to 350,000 loans, Joe.
Eddie, and that doesn't include the forbearance stuff. And guys, just understand that there was about a little over 1 million loans that came out of forbearance in the last quarter of 2021. And Eddie, those about 60% of those were not able to start making their payments again after they fell out. The foreclosure period ended, right? They were either 18 months or 12 months. And so there's another pile out there that this doesn't even show.
It's probably I'm going to throw a dart here, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
We're probably talking about just about 2.5 million loans.
Right. I would agree.
Cumulatively. Shadow inventory, the legacy loans that were delinquent before the virus, the loans that are in default before the virus, and loans that file for forbearance but haven't filed for a modification. And the reason they haven't is they don't have a job, they can't qualify.
That's right.
Right? Or whatever their story is. Their income's way off and they can't prove it.
Or they could just write a check to cover the 18 payments that they were in forbearance. They could do that too. That is an option. Ha ha, right?
Modifications on loans outside of forbearance are not going to be my prediction.
Yep.
My prediction. They're not going to be as common as they were last time because it's going to take too much to bring them current.
That's right.
Okay. So Joe, we're seeing these shocking things here. This was February 11th.
Mm-hmm.
A spike in the inventory. So obviously we're seeing the spike in foreclosure inventory. Joe, this is going to be the headline for the next many months because it's going to continue to go up month over month. It's up 29%, yep. Joe, compared to January. It's going to be, year over year. It's going to get to be bigger and bigger because that big blue line we just showed you, it's got to be dealt with. Right.
Hey, Eddie, you missed the key percentage there at the end of that sentence. It says 139% compared to January of 2021.
Oh,
that's bigger than a wagon wheel, Eddie.
So this was month over month, 29% based on the month before, and 139% based over year. So you're right. I did miss that, and thank you. Here's the thing, guys. This is the story.
Yeah.
Right. If you saw us last week and Joe and I looked like two little 14-year-old girls excited over, a new dress, and how talking about the market and, it's been years since we've seen that, the opportunity in the market. I've been buying non-performing notes since 1986.
Right.
But I've not bought non-performing notes in every market. I'd get real hot and chase it really hard. Then all of a sudden the inventory go away and I'd go back to doing other things. Then it would come back.
Yep.
I'd chase it really hard. Then it'd go away. So 2008 was the biggest level I'd ever personally chased it.
Right.
And that was literally, I'm not exaggerating, that was a huge percentage of people in note school.
It was.
Right. Not that people didn't do seller financing, not that people didn't buy on terms, not people didn't do the three pillars that we really teach are pretty balanced at the moment.
Yep.
But non-performing notes are really, really, really going to accelerate for all of the reasons that we're showing you. Right. And we like showing you graphs that these other people source because that way you can see we're not just, Joe and I aren't just cooking our own pie over here. Right? Joe, we had so many charts and graphs when we started assembling this presentation. We eliminated literally about 75% of the presentation because we had so much information supporting everything that we're now drawing to a punchline answer. Right. All right, Joe, let's talk about defaulted rent by income. I thought this was an interesting piece of information.
Yes, it's huge.
Look at that, Joe. the under 50,000 in income was a huge percentage of the defaults, and under 100,000, Joe, you've about covered the market here, right? So it wasn't the people making a lot of money that missed their rent. It was the low income.
That's 90% of what you got there between, levels 1 and level 2, graph 1 and piece 2 and 1 piece 2. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was, I don't know where you fit in this, but this is a big factor. And Joe, if you know that when we're chasing burnout landlords, we chase a lot of assets in the low 200s, from 100 to low 200s. And that's why we're helping these. But we've got some solutions for these landlords that didn't miss rent. They just need to get rid of their rental, and they need to defer their taxes to be able to do it. So we've got some really cool things there that fit exactly how we're chasing, knowing what the demographics are. It is very different when you're chasing a market when you know what the stats are of the market.
That's right.
Because instinctively, we kind of think, all the landlords missed supposedly about 20% of their rent, Joe. Isn't that the number?
That's
right. That's apartments and houses and small-time landlords and big-time landlords. And that's all low income to high income. But when you start really breaking it down, it starts looking pretty different. And by the way, there is a lot of people that still can't say they can't pay their rent coming up in March of this year.
Absolutely.
It's still like, it's not like all the landlords are going whoopee-doo, it's all over. That's not necessarily the case, but definitely by asset class. Well, Joe, how about our friends to the north?
Yeah, there's well, again, you read the two sub bullet points there below the headline, right? Prices may fall 20% in some markets, and basically, rising mortgage or rates and easy mortgages, right? And that's funny because Canada, or not funny, but odd, because they've always been a whole lot more conservative in letting, in granting mortgages. And so they went through that period as well. And then you had the buy and flip, and then, the speculation. And so now there's always a price at the end of that, right?
Yeah. And we're not positioning this that we're right behind them in this kind of a fall. No. We're not saying that. What we're saying is that the informed investor is the smart investor. Joe, they say it's the question you don't answer that may be the question you would want to know the answer to.
Right.
Right. So we just try to position you guys to make smarter, wiser decisions about exactly how this works. And so, Joe, I'm going to let you close us out and talk a little bit about the one-day class and introduce that idea, because, this is where we have time to slow it down and really get through a process with a student of showing them what's next, how does it work, how could you fit in that market, what could possibly be. We know, what Joe and I like a lot, but you might like another specialization within the business. Joe, I'll see you later, pal. Thank you.
Very good. So guys, thanks, Eddie. And really what we talked about here today was non-performing notes. We have 3 different pillars that we really are focusing on today based on what's hot in the industry, right? And number 1 is non-performing notes. It's a big thing, and it's going to be around for the next 2 to 3 years, guys. And then number 2 is creative financing, buying and selling on terms, as Eddie was talking about, the burnout landlords and what that looks like. And there are a pile. They when they bought into the whole landlording thing, they bought into passive income, or that's what they were looking for. And well, it turned out to be a little something different. And I love what Eddie always says about that. And that's, the real estate market has been really good to the landlord as far as appreciation, but the tenants really haven't, based on what's happened. And then the third pillar is performing notes and building wealth and, being the bank. And folks, I learned back in 1990, when I started in the note industry, that I would rather be the bank than the landlord. So what does that mean for you guys? How do you learn more? Next step is to attend one of our one-day classes, right? We're going to go through, we're going to give you the overview of what those three pieces look like, what that non-performing loans, creative financing, buying and selling on terms, and notes, what that looks like for you. And then you'll make that decision as to what that is. And then we'd love to see you at one of our 3-day classes. And that's kind of the natural progression there. So to find out more about what we do and the opportunities as we see them in the marketplace, certainly go to noteschool.com/TV. And, send us a little email, get with us, talk with us. We can talk back with you. And we, again, would love for you to take that next step with us. And we'd love to see you soon. So, guys, I think we nailed it today as far as what's going on in the industry. And we look forward to seeing all of you next week on our next episode of Note School TV. Until then, we'll see you on the other side. Thanks so much.
Well, hello, everyone. It is Brian with the teaching team here at Note School, and I'm excited that I get to be the one to invite you to the upcoming Gold in Notes class. That's right. It is a one-day deeper dive class that we call Gold in Notes because of how valuable this time spent is. This is a full day that we really get to dig into the nitty-gritty, the whole world of creative financing, not just how to acquire more deals, how to get access to more capital, how to defer a lot of the taxes for us as well as for the sellers that we're talking to, and really learn how to create your own notes. And really, once you learn how to create your own notes, this is really where we spend an entire afternoon really pulling back the curtain on what the note business is, from wholesaling notes, buying and holding performing notes to really build your wealth. I'll even show you a strategy called partials, which is by far the best wealth building tool I've ever seen in the real estate space. And we're definitely going to spend some time talking about non-performing notes, which is by far the biggest opportunity in today's marketplace, solely because of the events that have happened over the past couple of years. This is when people are not paying their mortgages, and we're going to make a lot of big money from these bad debts, and we're going to help a lot of people get a second chance. It's an absolutely fantastic day. Come spend a day really digging and discover a lot of this stuff so that you too can start building your wealth. It's a day meant to really be engaging. Bring your questions, bring your comments, bring your business problems, and we will see you there.